Good morning and welcome to episode 5 of the Family Business Podcast. Today I have with me a third generation company, Engineered Systems. Since 1985, Engineered Systems has worked to become a reliable resource in the construction industry, primarily working with roofing contractors as independent reps for products in manufacturers such as Duralast, Little Weesie Tiles, Bilco, Velux, Fix Fast, and many other brands. They strive to be a resource to contractors, design professionals, and building owners. Please welcome to the podcast Mike, Bryan, Chris, and Joe Gottron.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Feels like there should have been some applause at that point. So, welcome everybody. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Doing good? Good drive in?
Doing great.
Yeah.
Great.
This is really a lot of fun getting back to.
Back at it?
Yeah.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
No problem. So, I was looking at your guys' website, and if you're not in the construction industry like me, and you're just, somebody out there on the line looking at the website, it might be a little complicated to how you got to this point in your company. There's all these products, there's different services you provide. So, what was the origin story? And I might need to go to Joe for this one. Like, how did Engineered Systems and I don't even know if it was called Engineered Systems back in 1985 or not.
I'll go clear back.
All the way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like a little bit about the origin of the company.
All right. Well, I remember when I met a guy that was really, I was kind of in between. I left Gottron Brothers Company, and anyway, he was a guy by the name of Bob Pitts, who actually went to to school there, and he was a minister, he was a coach, he was all kinds of things. Anyway, he was the most fun guy he ever wanted to be around. Very bright, and he's the one that actually put me next to Duralast.
Okay.
Because John Burt, the owner of Duralast, owned this plastic or pool business. So anyway, he came home we started a little business together ourselves, but I mean it never really got going or anything. And he said, Joe, you ought to go up and see this guy. He said he's a $50 million company and he just got started. Well, the $50 million business, we did one little bait roof by his boat. But actually, the story was that there was a ship that came down the Saginaw River and ran into some rocks and everything. And since he had a pool liner business, they called him up to see if they could do any business on their ship. So anyway, he said, geez, but my product's just a pool liner. So he made some calls to Washington and some different things to see what the hell they were looking for and that. And he came across this product they were talking about. It was very strong, very everything. And so it actually started from scratch. And luckily enough, we were kind of on the ground floor when we went up there. And Jeff was just getting out of school at Ohio State.
Okay.
And when he was playing football at Ohio State, when he was on the off season, I think Ohio Bell or somebody he worked for, they offered him a pretty good job after he got out of school. And this is just the same time when I went back and forth a couple times up there and to see John Burt and talk things over. And they said they were going to give me Ohio if I wanted it, except there's a little place in Cincinnati. There's a little place there, a little place there. And so I learned a lot about Bob. He actually became a consultant. So one time he said, why don't you go with me on a trip? So I went with him to Florida, and he taught me an awful lot about the rep business. He said, I always sign a contract for at least 3 years, because he said if you do a real good job the first year, they want to get rid of you because they don't need you anymore. So anyway, and then he became a motivator. He even talked at one of our seminars at Duralast.
Yeah.
Just a fun guy. So anyway, he was really bright too, but that's how I got next to John Burt. So I didn't like the idea. He says, don't, when I told him about the 3 little or 4 places that they wanted to keep, he says, take the whole state or you're not even going to think about it. So when they called, I said, well, you guys told me this and told me that. So I said, well, I don't like the idea of not taking the whole state. So they called me back in about a couple hours. And they said, well, you got the whole state. So that's how we got started. So Jeff decided he was going to go with me. I said, Jeff, I don't know what it is. So by the time we go to Cleveland, we went to here different places trying to set guys up. And I think our first check was $29.50. Because, you know, by the time you set somebody up and they get a job, and then they pay their bill. So we got a hell of a time splitting at $29.50. And then jumped the next month clear to $300. And of course, as we started going, it was really a lot of fun to build a building, and it was some of the seminars they first started with and everything. But John Burt was a guy that he would look at things and he could come up with different ideas that always improve things, and it's just been a great company for us. And they didn't do a lot of the things that a lot of the companies he taught me do. I mean, about literature and everything else, I've bent over backwards to help you and everything. And of course, they learned a lot about the way. But the product they had was really a good product, and so actually now they got plants all over the place.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you guys were definitely ground floor when it comes to Duralast. I mean, obviously that was the first product you started repping. And so, at what point in the company did like Mike and Bryan did you guys come in to Engineered Systems?
Well, I think Mike was in Texas, weren't you, Mike?
Yep.
And Jeff was. It wasn't very long. John Burt took Jeff away from me. We started Ohio, and we were number 1 for 3-4 years. And John Burt really liked Jeff and everything, so he gave him the state of Michigan. And then Mike came, and I think he saw what we were doing a little bit, and John Burt made him the sales manager of the company, wasn't it?
Yeah, so just to jump in, I was living in Houston, Texas, and I was going to come home. This was in June of '83 that they became the reps for Duralast, and at the time it was J&J Sales, Jeff and Joe.
Oh, okay.
And then
that's good.
So I was coming home for Christmas, and they were all excited about making $27 a month. And they said, you ought to look at this. This is a great opportunity. So when I came home, we drove up to Saginaw at Christmas time and met John Burt, and we're walking around the plant, and I'm just I was working in HR, human resources in Texas, so I had zero interest in getting involved with this, but I said I'd drive to Saginaw to meet the company and see what they were doing. And then during walking around the plant, talking about human resources, John Burt, at the end of the visit, he said, why don't you come to work for us and start hiring our reps? So that was in December of '83, and then that's when he invited Jeff to move to Michigan and be the rep. So Jeff moved up there, and I moved up there in January of '84. So I left Tenneco, a big oil and gas company, to move to Saginaw, Michigan.
Beautiful Saginaw, Michigan.
Yeah, so I traveled around the country for about a year, and my wife now, but girlfriend at the time, basically said, I'm not moving to Michigan. So she moved to Dayton, Ohio, and this is like a year into the position. So I asked John Burt if I could become a rep and leave the position. So I moved to Dayton in like April of '85, and Duralast gave me the states of Indiana and Kentucky in addition to working with Dad. So then that's when Engineered Systems actually became official, because I had 2 states to work and cover. So that's kind of how the name kind of changed at that point.
But in Duralast at that time, like what was their revenue? I mean, it was obviously a lot smaller than now. Do you have any idea?
Well, it's kind of funny. Dad implied that they said they were a $50 million company, but I think they might have been a $500,000 company.
Okay.
It was really small. They had an office in Oregon. Wes Sharp was the guy out there. And then yeah, they weren't doing a lot of business at that time, so it's amazing to see kind of where it is today. But you know, so it was kind of a startup type of situation. And one other kind of funny story is I was out hiring reps, but John Burt wouldn't let me hire anyone that had any other lines. And so, you know, I'm trying to recruit people to become reps for Duralast, and there's no income for these people. And so I basically hired all my friends and my cousins and people like that to become reps around the country. So
anybody you could get to, you know, anybody you knew.
Yeah.
My grandma even had one seat.
So it was fun, but it was challenging. And yeah, working with Jeff, and I lived with Jeff up in Saginaw, and he became the rep of Michigan, and he's still there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. And then what about you, Bryan? Kind of when did you, apparently Mike probably recruited you in. You were probably on some highfalutin job somewhere, you know, and Mike's like, hey, man, I got an opportunity. How did that go down?
So I'm 14 years younger than Mike, and so I went to Ohio State in the early 90s, and I studied civil engineering, so my whole plan was to be a civil engineer. And so I went through the co-oping and was kind of figuring out whether I wanted to either go work for a construction company or go work for a design firm, or maybe even go work for like Anderson Consulting. So I kind of had some different options lined up right around the 1995, and I was scheduled to graduate in early 96. And I kind of remember like when in 95 he said, you know, I kind of have some odds and end jobs that need to be done. He was actually working in the basement of his house in
that sounds
North Columbus.
Got a couple of jobs I need you to do.
Yeah,
a lot of the basement.
Yeah, so he
awesome.
Had like this pile of like you know, miscellaneous papers to kind of go through and kind of look through and see if maybe there's some opportunities that were missed, and just kind of some general follow-up things. But I think that was kind of the planting of the seed there. There was a distributor in town that needed some odd job work done on like doing some takeoffs. That was back at the time when, you know, you got your projects on film, and you put the film on these things, and you were like looking on through like a light table and did takeoffs on that stuff. So I was doing that for.
We're so lucky, Chris.
I know. No kidding.
Yeah,
so lucky.
Yeah, like pre-internet times, right? So, so I made a little bit of side money doing that to help a distributor that he was not partnered with, but you know, associated with as a business partner, and so helped out there. So I think that was him kind of planting the seed of me seeing if I might want to do that. And then I do remember him taking me out to lunch on campus and saying, you know, how would you feel about, you know, coming and joining, you know, our group? Dad, I think, was like 65 at the time, with kind of a plan to phase out of the business over the next 5 years. And so we all kind of got together, and Dad said, you know, how would you feel about, you know, coming in, and you kind of come in at an entry position here, and every year, you know, we'll increase your percentage in the company. And he said, I'll decrease my percentage by the same amount, and then, you know, in 5 years, you and Mike will be, you know, 50-50 co-reps at that point. And that's basically, I had to make that decision of whether all that civil engineering I was studying to do, I was going to just kind of say, push that to the side and do this, or do I say no to the opportunity to work with family? And after, you know, praying on it and thinking on it, I chose this route, and it turned out to be a great decision.
Worked out pretty good.
But yeah, at the time I was like, you know, why did I go to school if I could have done this the whole time? So
yeah, Mike should have said something to you before all the engineering classes, right?
Yeah.
All the hard hours in the library.
Exactly. In hindsight, it was exactly the way it was supposed to be, but it was a tough decision at the time.
Yeah, that would be, for sure.
Yeah.
And what about you, Chris? I guess, how did you first get exposed? So obviously, Mike is your father here.
Yeah.
So how did you first get exposed to the company and growing up in it? Kind of talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Some of my earliest memories have kind of the company and the grassroots associated with it. The story I like to tell is, I remember when I was really little, he was working at the desk down in the basement making phone calls, and I just wanted to hang out with Dad. So I I had this little cut down golf putter, and I would just go down to the other side of the room and he had this mug that had a hole cut out of the bottom of the mug, and I would put the mug at the other side of the room and just hang out there for hours, just putting, listening to him talk. So, I mean, even before I knew what it was, I was kind of listening in and absorbing, and then little by little it was, hey, you know, while you guys are watching TV on the weekend, can you scan in business cards so I don't have to input them into a database? Can you do little odds and ends? A couple of times he handed me the phone. He's like, can you just cold call for us? And I was like, even if I got somebody, what would I say? I might have had 15 or 16. He's like, do you need a roof? Like, I don't know what I would have done, but little by little, I saw the progression from the basement to renting space to over time finally having their own dedicated space. And it was funny, when I first joined, somebody, I think it was John, came up to me and was like, do you want to see where the literature and the samples are kept? And I go, that's what I used to call Saturday, but sure, like, go for it. Like, and so we walk back there and see it. But yeah, for as long as I remember, the really fun part was showing up to hang out at Grandpa's house or maybe down for a Buckeye game and seeing the camaraderie between the three of them and Jeff, and hearing them talk about business and wins and, you know, tough losses, you know, things going sideways that just naturally happen, and hearing the fun that they had in it. It never really seemed like a sales job. It never really seemed like a anything other than, you know, let's go build some relationships. And thankfully that kind of stemmed to how they all got involved with you guys as well and built that relationship over time. I look back at when I first started, he was just bringing up time and time again on, you know, you just got to build relationships, you know, Kurt and I talk all the time type of thing, or he'd throw out different names, but Kurt and Keith definitely came up a lot, and it's fun to kind of build from, hey, it's a relationship first and we'll do business later type of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Mike, he was building relationships like all the time. I mean, Mike, you're my kind of guy. I mean, you're getting all these, like, you're planting all these seeds in these guys. They don't even know what's going on. You know, he's like playing chess. I love that kind of stuff. That's awesome. I used to have my friends come over, and I would get them to clean my mom and dad's house, like, and do my chores with me. So like that's like that kind of thinking right there. You know, well, we'll have fun in a little bit, guys.
Yeah, really.
Well, we're having fun right now. You know, we're doing cattle. We're cleaning up poop. This is good stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely so. So basically, you got really good at doing cold calls and making anything inside 10 foot with the putter.
Yeah, the putter's still my strength today. Cold calls are still not my strength today. Oddly enough, I came over to the business from a finance background, so kind of like Bryan here. I went to school for something completely separate. In fact, I made my decision early on. I wasn't going to be a part of the business, and I went and did 4 years of audit consulting and corporate finance, and
sounds really sexy.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
He went to Russia. All the time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I admittedly, part of my job was a lot of travel and month-long assignments, all international. So part of why I took the job was experience, and part of what I wanted out of it was the travel, the working abroad, et cetera, et cetera. I got exactly what I wanted and needed out of it, and met a lot of friends that I'll consider friends for the rest of my life. But I actually could not be happier that the phone call came when it came, because I was starting to think about transitioning out, and in true fashion, I got a phone call at 4 a.m. while I was in San Francisco, and he goes, hey, do you have a minute? And I go, well, it's 4 a.m, so I've got a few minutes. And so right there, he's like, no pressure. You got to do what you got to do, but I would love it if you could join. And so took a pretty hard left. But I remember saying, hey, you know, I'll commit for sure 2 years. I'll work as hard as possible, and at the end of that 2 years, we'll reevaluate and see if this is still what I want to do forever. And that date blew by, and we just crossed the 4-year mark, and couldn't be happier.
Yeah, Mike definitely planned out that 4 a.m. phone call. He knew what he was doing. Catch you when you're vulnerable. Yeah, whatever. Just let me go to bed.
Yes.
So that's awesome. I love hearing that story. You guys are really interesting. You know, you're really smart. You've done a lot of, like, the family. I mean, just like some things people wouldn't even know about. Like, Bryan, you're an engineer. I mean, and it wasn't just you're an engineer. You're really good at doing engineering, and really, like, top of the class engineer. I mean, and, like, just hearing even, like, Mark in the office here, his upbringing. I mean, it's just a true testament to how you guys turn out the way you did, and I think it's a lot of people could take away, like, some good parenting advice from the Gottrons here. I want to get into something a little more lighthearted. So, what are some things you guys do as a family throughout this journey to keep it a family and not just coworkers? You know, like golfing, fishing, some large family reunions. You know, anything like that you guys do to keep that.
A lot of that. Actually, what I love about our family is we've always had so much fun together, and nobody was paired off, or I like this one better than that or anything. Mm-hmm. And I think perspective is the whole thing in life anyway. I think, first of all, I think if you don't have God in your life, you don't know really what it's about. I mean, we're supposed to educate and appropriate kids. This is what we're put here for, and it seems like it's gone a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But we have a lot of fun together. We get down with Holly. She got a new home, and she's got a pool. And we had Christmas in July last year at her house.
That's great.
And some of the pictures we got at home, and when we go boating or whatever we do, it's really a lot of fun to get together. Everybody just, my wife, she doesn't even know the word no when she talks to the kids. She just starts on it. But she was really the backbone of our family. She was so strong in her belief of doing the right thing. And of course, I got where I was going weekends doing pigeon shooting and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. She was home with 7 kids.
Oh yeah. So, you guys definitely pump out the kids here. That's for sure. I'm about that though too. Right. I like that.
Well, 5 of the 7 are in their 60s.
Yeah, I'd like to just add, I think one of the fondest memories I have is we kind of have an annual fish trip that we take, and we just recently did it a week ago, where all the brothers come in and we go out on the boat with Dad, and Chris has been on the boat with us, and sometimes we'll get 2 boats, but it's been kind of an annual thing. And Dad being 90 now, he was like, when are we going out this summer? So we worked it out, got a charter, and just went out last week and just had a wonderful day together.
Really did.
So just being able to get out on the boat and be together, and I think about Christmases or holidays, and sometimes it's a challenge with us getting together and wanting to talk business, but at the same time it's pretty cool, just the 5 boys and 2 girls, and everyone's a little bit different, but we all get along great. I think that's where Mom and Dad have done a great job as far as just kind of that cohesiveness with the family.
Yeah.
I remember on our 65th wedding anniversary, we went to Tulsa. That's where Joey, our one son, he's with Bank of Oklahoma, and he's got a beautiful place out there. And he had banners up. I'm talking about really first-class pictures on every table, and every time we get together, it's just a ball. To me, it seems like there's so many people you look at in life that they start out with the right attitude, and of course, naturally, we get steered one way or another by different things that happen. And I just think that you see so many people. I don't care what rate they get in their life, but then they might give $11 billion to charity, and then they're divorced. I mean, pretty soon, I think everybody thinks they got the right idea, and then all of a sudden they start to think, I did it. I mean, if you know, I don't think without the perspective of God in life, it's a joke.
What are some things I guess you guys have done in your business to try to separate the, if anything, you know, like, or any advice you have to separate the family aspect from business? Because it's so hard when you're hanging out afterwards or you go to a party to not maybe want to bring something up like that.
You know, from a core value standpoint, I think one of the things that's been fun working with Bryan is, you know, you get asked different questions or things happen in business and you think about what's the right thing to do. And so I'd say 99 out of 100 times I'll call Bryan and just say, hey, how do you think we should handle that? Or what do you think about this? And what's nice is I'd say almost all the time we're on the same thought process as far as how we want to do it. And I think one of the things Bryan always talks about is customer first and how can we help them. And I just think that, you know, at the end of the day, if you're there helping the customer get what they need, then everything else takes care of itself. But to me, business is important, but not as important as family. And so I've always tried to take the perspective of, you know, it's not worth having a problem to, you know, succeed on one situation if it's going to affect, you know, the family or the company or, you know, doing the right thing. So I think that, you know, that's been kind of good seeing it from Dad and Jeff. But, you know, I just love the fact that with Bryan, you know, we kind of think the same way. And I'd say, you know, I'm feeling the same way with Chris in terms of just having, you know, if you have your values of what's the right way to do things, then it kind of helps, you know, keep you moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, one thing growing up in a family business, and maybe Chris, you know, he worked somewhere else and then came to the family business as I did for a little bit. But like, I tend to take for granted sometimes everybody's intent. Like, it's crazy because everybody's intent in the family company that's family is to do whatever's best. So like for the customer or for the business. So obviously the best thing for the business is to take care of the customer. And I definitely take that for granted sometimes because you're in the day-to-day and you don't realize that in other places when there's no family at this place, not everybody's always looking out for the business. And I think that's probably the biggest strength in a family company is, well, it could be, you know, if there was some malicious things happening, but in a good, solid family company, that's definitely something I think is taken for granted. You just don't think about it, like how lucky you are to have the people around you to care so much.
So I think there's a lost art making relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we build the business on. And today, everything is so fast that it isn't important. You know, you move down the block for $2, it's the guy you've been dealing up here.
Yeah.
And I just, another thing, I think we've gone backwards with our phone business. You go to make a call today, and it takes a half hour, and then you end up in the Philippines trying to But I mean, to me, it's ridiculous. John Burt was going to change up at Durlast. He was going to change the phone system. I told him, I said, I believe it. I said, if you don't have somebody at the other end of that phone to talk to, you don't have time to sit around and make calls for this or for that. If you want to buy something, you got somebody right away. After that, you'll all go to the Philippines.
And they definitely do up there when you call. I mean, it goes to somebody, or if everybody's busy, it just rings till it gets to somebody. So that is good.
And what I was going to say to Mike's point, having a family business, trust is something that's really critical, and I trust everybody in my immediate family and all the generations below, which is probably a little rare, but I mean, we don't have those kinds of trust issues. A year into the job, I moved from Columbus, near where the office was, to Dayton, so our physical location was separated by about an hour and a half, so we didn't really work in the same office, which maybe in retrospect was probably good, because we just kind of trusted that everybody's going to wake up early and get to work on what our tasks were to do, and I never had to worry, I wonder if Mike's, going to work hard this week or this month or whatever. It was something I just knew he was going to do, and it wasn't like we worried about, from the start. We basically just taken the whole territory and split the commissions that came in, which is really generous of them to do, considering I came into the territory after it had already been worked on for 12 or 13 years. You think about them, working months to get a paycheck that's less than $100 that they have to split. I come into a territory that's already had all that hard work poured into it to create, this network of already loyal Duralast buying customers. And so, and fortunately, they've learned a lot of lessons the hard way that they can just immediately pour into me with this information of best practices and ways to go about doing things. So I never took that for granted, that, I came into the position, with already all of that kind of head start into the territory that, they didn't necessarily get the benefit of. So it was something that I always appreciated to have, but it still just starts with trust. If you don't have to worry about some of the petty things of, hey, that was my job I sold, or how are we going to take care of making sure it's fair on compensation. If all that stuff's to the side, and you just wake up in the morning trying to fill your day with positive activities to hopefully help your territory be a better territory and do a good job being a sales rep, and not have to worry about all that other stuff. You can be way more productive, and I think the results are just way better.
Yeah, definitely a lot of animosity can happen from something like money, obviously, in family companies and any company. Let's talk a little bit about that. So why do you guys, why did you go that direction with splitting commissions with Bryan? I don't know if it was immediately, but as soon as he got rolling, as opposed to maybe doing it a different way.
Well, I think some of it was what Bryan said in terms of Dad's intentions to, kind of retire over a period of time. And then I think the other part is kind of what Bryan said was, we were just covering the state, and, to me it wasn't really that critical as to, specific sales versus just both working hard at it, when it ended up being just Bryan and I. So I think it was just kind of, what's the best way to work as a team, and what's the best way to take care of the customer. And in general, we just felt that things would work out, that way. And now that it's grown, it's kind of like it's gotten more complicated, but at the same time, just try to look at what's a fair way to compensate everyone in the business. How do you make it equitable for people and give them a chance to grow? So I don't know that there's a perfect way. You start off with an intent, and then just try to do the best you can to try to keep it fair as it keeps growing, right? So I think for the most part, I think it's been, worked out pretty well. But I think a lot of it was, Dad, and when we kind of had that initial meeting in terms of how do we transition and what's, fair to Dad and Bryan, and then going from there.
What's nice about it, you grow by the different accounts you have, how different people, you try to team help everybody, and the situation on the other side, you learn. I mean, you think if you're not continuing learning all the time, why? But it is funny that all the different things will happen because so many people do it different ways, and you set somebody up thinking you're going to help them, and you can't get a hold of them. You have to, I mean, but it was really a lot of fun when you stop to think of it, to see the company grow, and especially when you're one of these guys have really had a lot to do with Duralast, made the company get where it is today.
And speaking about that, so how many people work at Engineered Systems right now?
We're up to like 17 people.
17, that's
Yeah, so
crazy
it's,
growth.
It is. It's. I think about the early days when it was just a few of us, and then it's kind of like opportunities come about, and then I've always believed that you have to have the right people in your organization, and then you grow with people, and then that gives you more opportunities, and so you either have to kind of get bigger or you just stay small and decide that that's what you want to do. And for us, we just have continued to try to find good people to join the team, and then give them responsibility to go manage parts of the company. And I think that's where Chris has been kind of thinking in the direction of how can we take our successes and replicate them, and then do more of that and be able to offer more to the same customers on the things that they need.
Obviously, you got 17 now, and you came from a couple yourselves, and so how was the journey from that number, and like some lessons you learned? And specifically, people have a hard time hiring people, like they do. They're like, I'll just do it. Especially in family businesses, is like you can work yourself to death. Like there's always something to do. I mean, always something to do. Like I don't care if you sell all the sales and you come back to the shop, you might be able to pick up a broom and sweep. like there's always something to do. So how do you what's a good piece of advice for people thinking like, is it this the right time to hire? Is it not? How do you navigate through that?
Well, I don't think there's any science to it. There's more art than science. In fact, even in my short tenure, we've seen some turnover, and some from people that were new, some from people that were with us for 25 years. They both kind of sting the same way. Not exactly the same, but what I would say is, gut really does help, because at the end of the day, I see the business, and I think we see the business as a little family itself, and you're only going to invite people in that you trust, that you can get recommendations from others. That's the ideal. If you can get a reference from one person to another, you can pretty quickly judge character that way. We're not perfect. I mean, we've had people turn over, and but we've had some really great people come into the business that some kind of fell into our lap or fell backwards into us, and it's been ideal. So from a hiring standpoint, at the end of the day, we look at our values and say, will they fit? Because if they don't start there, the hard work and everything else goes out the window. If you can't fit within the team and play nice and work hard, then everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of it definitely is like Mike. You had a lot of success getting people that you were friends with, right? And you hear different stories from stuff like that. Some people will never hire their friends or their family, but then like there's people that have had enormous success just hiring friends and family. And like I think the beginning of the Durlast story with the reps and how they were chosen, and like they got to pick states, and I mean it's a crazy story really, like to think about now because how it's progressed. But obviously that's worked out well, going with your gut and kind of seeing the people and filtering them in to the company.
I like to stay away from negatives, but the only thing when Chris came with a family, he fired me first.
For the record, that's not true.
So I lost nothing from nothing.
So let's talk a little bit about where you guys see Engineered Systems going in the future. What's your goals, or kind of what's your current milestones that you guys are trying to reach?
I'll start with, I feel like when we started as a company, my goal really was to try to be the best rep agency we could be and work to be, as good as I can be at doing what I'm doing. And then, when Bryan joined the company, I feel like that was, fit the model, and he had a lot of the same, beliefs. And I feel like as a company, we've done a lot of those things, and I feel really good about what we've done so far. And so I guess being where I'm at, I don't think about that stuff as much now. It's more, how do we, keep with the values that we have? How do we take care of the customers? So I'm going to pass it on to Bryan and Chris and get their thoughts, because they're going to be the, really the future in terms of, kind of where we go. So maybe they have thoughts on it.
I know Chris has thoughts on it because he's shared those with me, and it's awesome because, quite honestly, it's not one of my strengths to think long term. I tend to think kind of very, in the stuff that I can really see short term, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly kind of thing is pretty easy for me. But getting beyond that's a little tougher. But even listening to Kurt and Keith talk, some of the way they talked about, how you just work these long days and hoping to put food on the table and doing things the right way. You just kind of trust that the process is going to work. And frankly, that's a lot of what I try to do, is like never losing focus of staying in contact with my customers to make sure that they're doing okay. Because I feel like if the customers are doing well, then, directly, indirectly, we'll be doing fine too, because we're partnered with all of those people. But it's refreshing to be around Chris and Mike. I mean, they're both very optimistic people and both growth-oriented people, which is fun to be around because they actually do have visions that are grandiose and put these big targets out here to try to hit, which I think is really cool. So just because I'm not particularly strong at it doesn't mean that it's not important to do that. But I think over the years, even Mike and I have been a little bit of yin and yang that way, and that he's super optimistic, and sometimes I'm the more cautious, conservative version of that we can bounce ideas off each other and whatever. And you probably need a little bit of both in businesses to make sure that you keep foot to the pedal, but also know where the brake is, I guess. But being through some of the company meetings we've had over the last 12 months, it's put us in a position where we're starting to think about what we want the company to look like in a year and 3 years and 10 years. And I'll pass the mic to you, Chris, because
Sure. So in its simplest form, I would say the key is to refine and perfect what we have at home. And what I mean by that is, we've always been an Ohio-based company, and I've been very lucky to learn from 4 of the best, including Jeff, in terms of how to sell. And, to some people it comes extremely naturally. And to these 4, I would say it comes extremely naturally. And it's funny, you go, how did you learn that? How can you pass that on? That type of thing. And I think you might see this in that there is a certain level of the workforce that are the most knowledgeable. They know it inside and out, and they've never had to think to pass that knowledge down at all. We have a lot of people that are either eager to learn but don't have a source, or just are learning by stumbling over themselves. And I'm trying hard to refine and distill all the lessons they've learned over all the years so that we can kind of continue to grow, if you will. Grand scheme, right now we have 4 divisions within the company, not just roofing. We have interiors, cladding, we have insulation, and a number of other small components. And really our strength is that we get visibility by partnering with the best manufacturers in the industry, period, bar none. And we have a lot of visibility to a number of things because people reach out to us for different items at different times. So if somebody is reaching out to us for a brand new project and they need a roof, great. Now the rest of our divisions are well aware of that. If they need us for cladding, which is early on, or let's call it concrete admix, which is early on, the rest of our divisions now get exposure to that. But the one key point to that hasn't been missing but hasn't been maximized is the communication between those divisions. That's the only way that you can run as efficiently as humanly possible is making sure that the advantages that we have and are awarded to us by our scale are being maximized. So that's kind of part one. Part two to that, once we get all the pieces in place and we get the process rolling, would be to hopefully scale up where it makes sense. I think the best scale comes from relationships, much like the rest of the business, and understanding, hey, you know, we partner really well with these sets of manufacturers, or we partner really well with maybe a counterpart rep in another state that needs an exit plan and doesn't have a family to pass it down to or somebody they want to sell it to. Those are the kind of ideas that we're tossing around now, because we're kind of primed to help make it a fair and successful transition in the future if we're lucky enough to get there. But in the meantime, you know, I was lucky enough to be able to come into the business, and there's a guy sitting to my right that has a couple kids that hopefully will consider it, or cousins that will hopefully consider it. I was the only one to make a move so far. So, you know, all that is a changing dynamic, and we're just going to take it as we go. But if nothing else, kind of the future holds, we got to keep to our core values and keep doing how we got here, because if we lose sight of that, it's, you know, it's not going to be as fun. It's not going to be as successful.
Yeah. Yep.
One thing I was going to add is, you know, given Chris's age and what he was able to learn in high school at Ohio State and at his previous employer, we had talked earlier about, you know, my early job of going through films to do takeoffs. I mean, technology's advanced so much with his ability to process data and analyze data, and, you know, just use the technology that, you know, Mike and I grew up in a time where we basically did almost everything with pen and paper in a planner, and most of it was just, you know, you're driving to people's offices, you're using a beeper, you're stopping at payphones to use a calling card, and all these like things that are just, you tell that to young people today and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we did that. It sounds crazy.
You still don't have your pager?
I do not have my pager. I probably do in a drawer somewhere, if you want to be honest about it, but I haven't used it in a while. But obviously fax machines the speed of business was so much slower, and I think the level of expectations of growth from manufacturers was so much lower, kind of directly related to that now you have the ability to do things so much more quickly, efficiently, and again, you can analyze data in real time to see like where you might be having, you know, weaknesses in your business, if you want to call it that, of opportunities for growth or whatever, and you know, he's really good at analyzing that stuff with that technology, which again, we didn't grow up even thinking in those kinds of terms. So it's refreshing to have somebody who has that education and knowledge that you can bring that into a business that previously never really studied that. So it's been helpful.
Yeah, it's fun to look through like the Technic Roofing archives too and see some of the proposals we sent out. And I mean, they were good. I'm sure they're like, I mean, we've always had really good proposals, but some of them had pictures, like physical pictures attached, like, you know,
Polaroids.
Yeah, Polaroids, right? So, and you know, it's crazy because now all of our pictures are in the cloud and you can put them on the proposal, and it's just, things have obviously, the speed of business seems to me like it's changed a lot. I mean, I didn't experience it, but I just think everybody wants stuff so fast, and it's just funny, like Chris talks about extracting the knowledge from you guys, and that's something I also talk about. I was hoping maybe like the Neuralink by Elon Musk could be ready, and I could just plant that into Keith and Kurt, you know, and just beep, download, and then I'll be good to go. But, you know, that's definitely something like I do talk about to them when we talk about processes, and I'm, you know, I've just learned by watching, but when I'm trying to teach someone my process, like we just brought in a guy, and his name's Chad. He's worked with us for 20 years. And he's running the service department now, and it's something I did. And it's not just a weakness of them to know how to do their process, but I was trying to teach Chad like how I did stuff, and I was like the worst teacher ever. I'm like, I don't even know how to teach anyone anything. It's terrible. So I think it's definitely a good, if you're going to be expanding, if you have ambition to expand, you definitely have to be able to lay it out to someone. How do you do your job? And sometimes, at least in our family company, it's hard to set them expectations. So you guys are hiring, other people to take over maybe certain areas, and how are you educating them to how to do their job, or set that expectations, or show them what you expect and what to do?
I'll let you take that one, but I will throw in the one caveat that I think, especially those that have been here since the beginning, is, and I've heard it my entire life, is that part of the process can't just be, my biggest takeaway for you to learn is to outwork everybody. Now, that is always lesson number one, but I think one of the biggest frustration points when you're teaching somebody new is if they would just put in 80 hours a week, they would learn it way faster. And it's like, yeah, I get that part.
But they're dinner at the office.
Yeah, exactly. So I would love to hear your guys' answers, but it's true. If you worked 80 hours a week, you'd learn it way faster. But I also like to recenter and say, hey, how were you when you started? And the pretty funny stories come of that question more often than not.
I'll just throw one thing. Probably my favorite part of working with the new people coming in is trying to help them connect to people they can't get a hold of, and networking and kind of work off the relationships I have. And so that's kind of fun to, if a lot of times they'll call and they won't return their call. So I'm able to get the people on the phone and try to do three-way communication with them. So I think Chris has kind of laid out kind of almost a template of ways to speeding up the process for them to learn. But I think part of it's them having the initiative to, learn some of that stuff on their own time, or, not during the 8 to 5 period, but also then, trying to show them, hey, here's how we talk to customers. But at the end of the day, they've got to have their own way to talk to them, because we all have different personalities. But, that's kind of I feel like as I'm, maybe not exiting the company, but, as I'm in the time where I'm at right now, it's trying to help them with just connecting to people that they can't get to, and then, working with our manufacturers and getting them connected to our manufacturers so that they can, help the customer get what they want. So I don't know if you wanted to add something.
I'd like to say one thing about your family is, and I'm not saying this to puff you up or anything like this, but I'm serious.
All right.
Seriously, we've always got along so good. I mean, you make people feel so much at home, and there's a lot of similarities between your family and ours, I think, as far as the way you believe and everything. And of course, like I said, when your dad paid $50,000 to go talk to somebody how to learn. I mean, you're learning. You want to be the best at everything you can do.
Yeah. Takes commitment for that.
I mean, your whole family has always been really friendly, and everybody's. I can't say the same for everybody's that we've set up, but you're exceptional. You should change your name to Exceptional instead of Technique.
Oh man, I don't. Yeah, you definitely puffing us up a little bit there. Exceptional.
Dad, you're right. What I was gonna say about trying to train processes, I know that there's probably gonna come a time where I got to do a better job of putting that in writing, kind of some kind of a something you'd be able to slide off in a form of a manual of kind of like the steps and roles and responsibilities and things that you need to be doing to do our job well, and that probably will be something that I do eventually need to have as a to-do and get done. But I was really fortunate to, kind of study under people that were really good at what they did before I started. So when I started in 96, Mike was doing it, Dad was doing it, my brother Jeff was doing it, the neighboring territories. I would say that one thing that's really cool about the Duralast rep family is it's a really helpful, generous group of people that generally, if you reach out to any of them, they're very willing to share, best practices, the rep meetings that we had twice a year. We had a mid-year meeting, and then like the big awards meeting, and the sharing of best practices was great. But just watching people that work hard and do things well and do it with character, integrity, and doing that from the start, I learned under, really good, visual learning and just watching. Dad and Mom always had a house that was full of people, it seemed. It's like they always had lots of friends coming by, whether that be fishing friends or hunting friends or poker friends or church friends. We'd be hosting, the pastor of the church over for dinner, and so it always feels like we were in conversation with people. So being conversationalists, I think that we've always been very comfortable with people and striking up a conversation with somebody that you don't even know, which is very helpful in cold calling or so it's like I feel like and I'm the youngest of 7, so I always felt like I was talking to people that were much older than me. So when I started the job, and I'm 22 years old or whatever I was, and I don't know
now. You are.
when I started.
Great. Old maybe for 22.
But you probably had to deal with this, Ben. Like, if you start in as a professional and you're young, I think people often think of, why would I be listening to this young person who probably doesn't really know much about roofing, which I really didn't. I mean, I'm trying to sell a roof to maybe a 50-something-year-old building owner that's been doing something their whole life, and I'm this young person. I'm kind of intimidated, saying, why would you buy a roof from me when, I've got a year experience or whatever. And obviously you try to build that, trust and whatnot, but it's really helpful when you see the product knowledge combined with the genuine interest in asking good questions about their problems and the whole process of that it'd be kind of hard to write all that down in a roles and responsibilities document kind of thing, as opposed to genuinely showing the next generation of salespeople how to do all of those things. I think you would visually learn that a lot better than anything that you could document, if that makes sense.
You gotta, in sales, especially in a family company in general, you got to have some sort of figure it out factor, right? You got to do your own style. I mean, I don't know if it's like, I kind of can't wait to have a son in the company and just be like, I don't know, do this, and just not even tell him how to do it. So and I'd be like, yeah, that's right.
Crash and burn.
I guess you'll figure it out somehow. But I just think back when I first came to the office, I had to get permits for a job, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna get a permit for this. And I was like, hey, who do I go to for this permit? And my dad's like, I don't know. I was like, well, what town is it? Is it the county, the town, state? He's like, I don't know. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll figure it out, And I think that's definitely how I learn better, because I've adapted to learn that way. But not everybody's adapted to learn that way. But then again, you know what you're dealing with when you do put them to the fire like that, and there's always lessons to drag out of that either way, I think. So you're right on there. All right, so best and worst thing on a family business. I'll give you a second to think about it. So we're looking for, what is the best thing that you've had or taken away or grateful for in your family company? And then the worst thing, what has been the worst thing in your family company? It can't be the worst thing is we get along great. It's got to be something extra bad. It got to be something juicy, something that, because other people are in family companies, and when we don't talk about stuff like this, everybody might think their family's different or their family's worse, but everybody has problems, and I think it's good to maybe just bring something up. It doesn't have to be crazy, especially if you're going through some right now. We don't need to hash it out in the podcast, but just something you could think of. Best and worst from a family company. Joe, you wanna go first?
Well, the best thing is our family is our legacy, actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like I say, their mother is so happy just having all these kids and everything that we just have so much fun together. And to be honest, my kids always taught me not to be negative, so I don't have anything.
That's good. We can let him pass on that one.
Who taught you that?
What's that?
He would have had something, but you guys drilled it in his mind to be positive.
You said keep this clean, didn't you?
Well, I mean, you know, we don't have any sponsors yet, so we can't lose them.
I'd say the best thing for me is, you know, when you have a positive thing happen during the day, being able to share it and talk to each other. I mean, you know, Bryan and I talk, you know, it's fun to share the successes, and even Chris and I now, it's like, you know, we tend to get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's kind of fun first thing in the morning when he's calling at 6 a.m. and say, let's go, and, you know, just, you know, having that ability to work together, win together, you know, share losses together, things of that nature. And
not to interrupt you, but I'm going to rephrase this. Not the worst thing maybe, but like a difficult thing. So something that's difficult.
Sure.
A difficult thing, yeah, there was a time where one of our biggest, best lines, you know, we almost decided to part ways, and it wasn't really, I don't know, it was very complicated, but, you know, calling our brother Jeff and talking about this, and, you know, it had been a major change in the company, and, you know, he was so disappointed and so couldn't understand, and, you know, fortunately we didn't end up, you know, doing it, but, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the relationships that we have, and almost getting to a point where it was going to change, you know, the dynamics of our company and everything.
Yeah.
That was probably the worst thing, but it ended up, everything worked out, and we didn't end up going there, but that was a tough time.
Yeah.
On a similar note on the positive thing, I mean, it's not just the wins. Celebrating the wins is really fun, but even when we have a loss, and frankly, as salespeople, we can probably all relate to it, the losses are probably stick with us longer than the wins, because it's like, you know, if you're pouring, you know, heart and soul into trying to close a sale, and then the customer chooses, you know, another option over what you did, you know, you lose sleep over that and try to figure out, what did I do poorly, what could I have done better, you know, different, and I love the fact that, you know, Mike and I can, you know, talk about that, Chris and I can talk about that, about, you know, what would we do different, and hash all those things out as a family business, because, you know, we're all trying to get better at it, and it's like I can make that call to them, and I'm not worried about, you know, them going, you know, they're going to judge me for losing the job, as much as we're going to talk this through of, you know, I wonder if we should have tried doing this, or maybe we could have added this to our proposal, or maybe we should have pitched a totally different system, or maybe we needed to get to a different person in the organization we were just talking to the wrong person, or all those kinds of things. But I just think it's fun to be in a type of business where we're less worried about, you know, feeling bad about the loss as we are about trying to get better for the next one, and having that open line of communication, I think, is awesome. You know, and I'm sitting here struggling to come up with something that's all that negative. Mike's example is a good one, because that was a pretty heavy one. And again, I think a lot of, you know, there are issues that come up, but I don't know that there are issues that are related to being part of a family business. For me, being part of a family business has helped when the negative stuff has come up, because, you know, I trust the people in the room to be able to help get through those negative things. So if I think of it, you can come back to me. But I'm
yeah, I think you said it though too. Like you're just saying, average business stuff is the negative stuff, and you guys trust each other. So when you're talking through, like, you know, Bryan lost this big job, it's not, no one's thinking like it's because Bryan didn't do his job good. They're just, you know, they know you had the intent to go out there and, you know, give it your best at bat. And that's the trust factor, like you've mentioned a couple times. So, I mean, that's a good note on a family business for sure.
I'd say two-parter for the good side. One, it's pretty loose on the other side, but on the first part is, you know, one of my friends kind of gave me the advice of, you get to see people you've known your whole life in a whole different light. Do they like what they do? And I go, they love what they do. And I've gotten to see, I didn't get to see my grandpa in action, but I've gotten to see these guys, close family friends, Uncle Jeff, all really it's kind of like playing a sport after sports are done.
Mm-hmm.
It's seeing everybody compete, and it's a whole different light. And it's so much fun to see everybody in their element because truly they care. It's fun. We love the people that we work with, and that actually segues perfectly into part 2 is, this is the Family Business Podcast, and we're lucky enough to work with a lot of small businesses and family businesses that are bootstrapping it and trying their absolute best and winning a job with or for somebody that needs it or, is trying to get to that next level is very satisfying. It's very satisfying. It's great to see the guys that are crushing it too, don't get me wrong, but it's very satisfying to see each and every level of business, and we're lucky enough to get to support the little guys all the way up to the big guys, and that's been very fun and gratifying. From the the difficult side is probably
you'll think of someone you guys leave. I assure you.
Perspective and patience, I would say, because I think everybody has the idea of getting to the right level of success. And I think you put it really well in a family business. Everybody is looking out for the best for the business and for the family. So you don't have to worry about the intention. The goal of patience and perspective is just understanding why they think that their path that might be slightly different than yours is actually the right path, and you need to take that into account. And then the patience is both with yourself and them. Just because, when we first started, we would talk about, the bread and butter of Duralass has always been the small Main Street restaurant roofs. And, Mike Suman and I went after these big whoppers that we ended up having more fun with, personally, Mike and I probably. And, there's something to be said about both paths. Neither are wrong. And you just have to keep the perspective and patience that they want what's best for the team as a whole and adjust accordingly. But keeping that in mind is tough at times.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's got ambition, and at some point, everybody's ambition diverges, because maybe somebody wants to do more than others. So, the only way to remedy that is to have patience and perspective. I love
Respect.
it. I love it. And respect. Yes. So, thank you guys for being on the Family Business Podcast.
This is fun. Yeah,
This is
thank
great.
you for having us.
This is great. I really, Is this every day?
Every day. This is actually all I do.